A few days ago, the internet was set on fire with leaked concept art and a synopsis for WB Montreal's upcoming Wonder Woman game, and while I can't share the images due to copyright concerns, let's just say the direction that they're taking is intriguing. And it's about time, isn't it? The Amazon warrior princess has been long overdue for her solo gaming debut, and the possibilities are endless, and reading the synopsis got my mind racing. What genre would best suit her legendary abilities, and what gameplay mechanics could do justice to her power set and her mythology. And the more I kind of peeled back the layers of Wonder Woman's potential in the gaming space, I was left with one exciting question. How can we create an experience that not only showcases her abilities, but also dives deep into the fascinating lore of Themyscira and Wonder Woman's love for humanity? While Wonder Woman has appeared in various video games over the years, her portrayal and gameplay have been inconsistent, ranging from underwhelming to more faithful representations. We had the Justice League and Justice for All video game on the Game Boy. I don't know if you guys remember that game, but I did. And it didn't do justice for Wonder Woman at all, or many of the other characters for that matter. It's definitely her weakest entry thus far, as the gameplay does very little to promote Diana or explore her Amazon powers. And then you had Arena of Valor, which was this free-to-play mobile and console game that, like others of its kind, you proceed through the game by fighting waves of enemies. And Diana isn't terrible in this game, but it was underdeveloped with its gameplay abilities, and it brought it down a little bit for me. And then you had the more recent games like the LEGO DC Supervillains. That one did a better job at portraying all of her personality and moral sense of justice and lack of judgment of others. Followed by the Injustice games with the iconic Susan Eisenberg voicing her, that brings an Elseworld take on Wonder Woman that I personally enjoyed. Now, with tons of excitement after the 2021 announcement of a solo Wonder Woman game, there have been recent developments and rumors that I came across that kind of raise concerns about its development process and its direction even. It doesn't help that there are rumors that appear credible that Warner Bros. Montreal studio might be having a tough time actually creating the game itself. Apparently the team is just now looking for a lead gameplay engineer, which is basically someone whose role is to lead the project on a gameplay level. And the game was announced a few years back, and since the job posting is true, that they're looking for a lead game engineer, then it makes me wonder what WB Montreal has been doing for the past 3 years since that announcement. I believe it's going to be an action-adventure type of game, so I'm expecting combos and speed of combat like Insomniac Spider-Man and Rocksteady's Batman Arkham trilogy, right? But hopefully the final product turns out great, because the studio has made games I highly enjoy, and now you have a character like Wonder Woman that you could really create an entire trilogy with. Reading that it is an action-adventure did make me wonder if there could be another route to take the Wonder Woman game. Could Wonder Woman also work as a heavily inspired Souls-like game? Now, when I say Souls-like, I'm not saying it should play something like an Elder Ring or a Dark Souls. I'll get into the gameplay mechanics in a moment, but I think the genre fits Wonder Woman due to the weapons that she uses and her role as a warrior for Themyscira, right? So Wonder Woman's style of fighting would have more emphasis on like tactical movement and combat strategy, like preserving stamina and attacking only at precise moments, compared to hack and slash or action-adventure style games like Devil May Cry, Bayonetta, and the older, like pre-2018, the older God of War games that tend to emphasize aggression, creativity, and movement, right? Now, with combat, there are some mechanics you could implement that could make it interesting. For example, you could borrow from a Souls-like game like The Surge, for example. In that game, it has a feature that allows you to angle your weapon to remove limbs off your opponent, allowing like combat variety for how to handle different opponents and keeping the fighting fresh. Especially if you throw in a combat flow like Sekiro while you're using weapons like daggers, axes, spears, bow and arrows to off-balance your enemy. The most important part of Souls-like games for me is the parry system, which is something Sekiro excels in. Parrying your opponents in this game can recharge your stamina bar, but consistently blocking strikes could deplete your stamina. This would help encourage gamers to carefully decide the next move. And if you're thinking about, okay, well, how can we upgrade Wonder Woman? Well, in terms of upgrading Wonder Woman and her weapons, it depends on the route you want to go, right? I'm okay with something similar to a skill tree that allows more abilities, or you can focus upgrading on Wonder Woman's core traits like endurance, strength, magic control, speed, poise. Poise just means, at least in my head, poise would mean that it'll be harder to stun Wonder Woman the more you upgrade that stat, essentially. And then you have intelligence. Even the weapons like Wonder Woman's axe and her boomerang tiara could increase as well. The tiara could be upgraded to increase the speed, for example. And if you really want to dive into fantasy, the more you increase your magic and intelligence skills, the longer you can control the boomerang in the air until it reverts back to you. Now, in terms of level design when creating this game, it wouldn't be a bad idea to make it a linear game. A game that knows what it is and doesn't need to worry about making up quests or collector items for you to gather off the main path in order to just pad the game's runtime. I think open world games are good, but for people who work regular 30 to 40 hour weeks, having a game with a clear main path and a runtime on the shorter end, like a 25 to 30 minute hour game, is enough as long as the gameplay mechanics and the story hits. If you want a semi-open world like Jedi Fallen Order, Jedi Survivor, that has shortcuts that you discover and certain rewards if you go off the path, then that could work as well. Let me know below if you prefer a more open world setting for Wonder Woman. But let's not forget that we do need a soundtrack that can immerse us into not only the mindset of Wonder Woman, but also the environment she's traveling in. It would have to be something that not only has that Greek mythology vibe to it, you know, that medieval folklore undertone, but also has that triumphant, brave warrior vibe when going through different levels and fighting several bosses. Some other video games I think a Souls-like Wonder Woman game could borrow from is instrumentals from either God of War 2018 or the God of War Ragnarok soundtracks. You know, actually, why not both? You know, you could just, inspiration from both of them. And if you compare those with From Software's recent game that came out, like a year or two ago, Elden Ring, that could work. I don't want anything from the older Souls games like Dark Souls, Bloodborne, etc. because in my opinion, they have this heavy, ominous sound that I don't think translates well for who Wonder Woman is as a character. Now, I could be wrong, but that's just kind of how I see it. Elden Ring is better suited. Think about a potential boss battle, right? Between Wonder Woman and, let's say, Ares, for example. And if you have the soundtrack like Godric the Grafted playing in the background, I think that will be heat to actually play through that. Now, in terms of a story, Wonder Woman isn't a character that has definitive arcs that you can just read that defines the character, right? Like Superman has these certain arcs like Death of Superman, and Batman has one like The Long Halloween, for example. Both Superman and Batman have like multiple arcs where you can just read purely that arc and you get the sense of who this character is. Wonder Woman is more of like a long-term type of character that you kind of read, and based on their runs of the character, you get the essence of who she is. And there are fantastic runs of Wonder Woman, and we can take different elements to create an original story. Wonder Woman is usually a side character in other DC games, but thankfully the Justice League TV series and the DCEU Wonder Woman movies, the first one in particular, helped Wonder Woman stay relevant. There are many stories to pull from, but there's two in particular that can help explain who Wonder Woman is. Depending on the direction you want to go, an Elseworld story like Wonder Woman Dead Earth by Daniel Johnson could make the game stand out among every other superhero video game. It's essentially a story where Wonder Woman gets the Captain America treatment and sleeps for a few decades. She awakes to a post-apocalyptic world where the majority of DC superheroes are gone, leaving for herself to defend the last human city against a bunch of monsters while trying to uncover what happened to cause a post-apocalyptic world. This story could lend itself for open world exploration. The world in the story was similar to Mad Max Fury Road. You could have makeshift vehicles running over the desert. You can have these violent combat elements like Wonder Woman using her lasso made from the spine of a popular DC character to fight. It was a good story, you know. The story would be able to allow various enemy types. So if you want to, you can have different enemy types with different strengths, especially if the destruction that caused a post-apocalyptic situation, you could argue that there was radiation that caused people to mutate certain abilities. You can even have Wonder Woman face the villainy Inc., If you don't know who the Villainy Inc. is, think of Spider-Man Sinister Six, but it's Wonder Woman's enemies, essentially. It could help show how deep Wonder Woman's rogues gallery is by showing people like Dr. Psycho, Giganta, Duke of Deception, Cheetah, and, other characters that's in her gallery. Now, if you want a more psychological emphasis for the story rather than action-based, you could go down the route of Greg Rucka's Wonder Woman Year One mixed with the Lies storyline. Those two have a lot of interesting stuff that you could pull from. Year One is basically the Wonder Woman 2017 movie with certain tweaks, but it's a good basis to understand Wonder Woman's character, right? And if you throw in the Lies storyline, it's about Diana realizing that her memories are changing for an unknown reason, and that there are lies in her head that are causing her self-doubt and what's true or not. We could have this set in Themyscira with Cersei attacking, and she uses her magic to have one woman lose her memory and doubt what memory she possesses is actually true. This could cause Diana to go through many obstacles to reach her, and not only regain her sanity, but also save Themyscira. This is a good opportunity to throw in like some bosses too if you want to. You could throw Ares in there, or Cheetah, or Devastation. In Devastation, they're just a character that is a dark mirror image of Wonder Woman. Devastation was created by the Greek god Kronos to represent the dark side's own champion of the gods. That's pretty much who Devastation basically is. But with all that said, it's not easy to make this come true. I'm not a video game developer. I don't have a job in the video game industry, but that's why I don't want to be too harsh for the game developers at WB Montreal. We don't know their situation. Maybe they finally cracked the story and they wanted to really make sure the story was good before they moved on to gameplay. Or maybe they tried out a gameplay mechanic, didn't really turn out that well, so they go back to the drawing board. There's so many other explanations that could be, so I don't want to be too harsh on them, especially when you have these numerous layoffs and counting so far, and you're seeing these articles, like I think with the Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League game, it had a whole expose of Warner Brothers pretty much ignoring developers' their own creative desires in exchange for another cash grab. And so I'm just left to wait and see what else could be the reason. In the meantime, this would be an interesting choice for a Wonder Woman game if you make it into a Souls-like type of direction. What are y'all thoughts on this?